from Gorbachev's freedom to Putin's war. Arkady, welcome to Big 550 KTRS here in St. Louis.
Good morning. Thank you.
You betcha. The goal of the book is to sort of explain the last 25 years of Russia?
Correct. The goal of the book is to explain how did we get from Russia of 25 years ago when it started opening up and ended the Cold War and embraced freedom to today, where Russia is seen as a security threat in Europe, as a threat to its own people, and as a challenge to the United States.
It has, it was the angry bear for a very long time, and then with oil prices plummeting, we hear that it is doing some massive damage inside Russia. What's going on?
Well, I wouldn't exaggerate the damage it's doing at the moment. I think a lot of people have actually adjusted. Yes, there has been a very sharp devaluation of the currency. The living standards have fallen, the incomes have come down, but relatively speaking, people are still better off than they were in the early 90s. So that's what their point of reference is. And they're still holding, none of this, the plummeting of the oil price you mentioned and the shrinking of the economy seem to be reflected in Putin's popularity rating, which stays in the high 80s.
It's sort of a mix of the old who grew up under the Soviet Union and the new that only know this sort of new Russia. So how can it be that Putin is more or less basically a dictator, still enjoy such great popularity?
Well, there are two parts to that question, or two parts to that answer. One is that, as I said, the years of the decade of economic growth and high oil prices raised living standards. So that's obviously been a huge factor in Putin's popularity. But the second one is this narrative which he has created of making Russia great again, which may sound a bit familiar to the U.S. audience. It's the narrative of Russia sort of coming back from the cold, Russia coming back after years of humiliation and defeat in the Cold War, the narrative of resurgence, and regaining its influence as a great world power in the world. And Syria, and before that Ukraine and Crimea, were the evidence of that.
You write in the book, Arkady Ostrovsky, The Invention of Russia, that cynicism rules. Russians trust neither their doctor, the judge, the policeman, never mind their government or the media.
That's right. There has been extraordinary alienation from the Russian political class. If you like, if you will, the Russian voters today are like the television audience. They watch a show. They consider everything that's happening in the Kremlin a show, and in which they play effectively no part. Perhaps they can vote, by pressing buttons like they do in the interactive talk shows. But ultimately, they have really no influence over how things develop in Russia. The most commonly heard answer in Russia, in my reporting, first for the FT and then for the Economist, is, well, nothing depends on us. So there is this sense of helplessness which is ingrained, and at the same time admiration for Putin's mainly foreign policy that keeps him in power. I mean, no dictator, and Putin, you're right, I mean, he's almost a dictator. No dictator can survive without some sort of legitimacy. Now, Putin's legitimacy is not the one of winning democratic elections. It's the legitimacy of a czar, almost.
The book is called The Invention of Russia. The Financial Times called it the book of the year, and it was the winner of the UK's Orwell Award. What would you say, and I know it's a country of hundreds of millions of people, but what's the general rule of thumb when the Russian people are asked about America?
Unfortunately, the rule of thumb at the moment is after several years of rabid anti-Americanism that has been pouring from the television screen, and Russia is a country where the state controls television completely, so there are no alternative sources to the state television, and television provides news to some 90% of Russians. The view of America is a country which is hell-bent on weakening Russia, undermining it, ensuring that it never rises again, and conspiring against the interests of the Russian people. It's much easier when your roof is leaking and your income is falling to blame a distant America for your troubles than to blame either your government, which is not entirely safe, or your own laziness.
Sounds like there's a lot of similarities between Russia and the United States these days.
There is. I mean, the similarities between Russia and America is a subject in itself. I mean, the two countries are in many ways very, very similar. I mean, both in terms of space, geographical space, and in terms of their need of a mission, their idea of sort of exceptionalism. There are a lot of similarities between Russia and America, and culturally so as well. I mean, Faulkner was and still is one of the most admired and read Russian, writers in Russia. Not to mention Hemingway.
Yeah, so two American writers. Interesting. The book is called The Invention of Russia. Arkady Arkovsky is with us. The book won the Financial Times Book of the Year. You can get it everywhere, including Amazon.com. Arkady, real quick, I got about a minute. Donald Trump has praised Putin. How has that gone over in Russia?
The feelings are completely mutual. Putin praised Donald Trump. He would love Trump to win in November. They share a lot of traits, even though Putin is an ex-KGB man and Trump is not. But their disregard for facts, their attitude to the media is very similar. And most importantly, Putin feels that Trump is a man he can do deals with. Trump loves deals, so does Putin.
So,
sitting down two of them and deciding the future of Europe and its borders, Putin would like nothing more.
The book is called The Invention of Russia. Arkady, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
You got it. 8:50.